up, guys? Welcome back to our series on Russia. Today we're going to talk about our top 10 tips before you go to Russia. So things that you should know.
Or that we wish we knew, or
exactly,
that would help make the trip a little bit easier or more enjoyable in some ways. So here they are. Are you ready for number 10?
Number 10. Number 10 is YANDEX. So YANDEX is like the Uber of Russia, and
but there's other versions of it too. There's YANDEX Translate, there's YANDEX Metro. It's like the Russian version of all things that you'd want to do.
Yeah, they kind of have like a monopoly on like everything, it seems like. But we use specifically YANDEX like Uber, and it was really easy and really cheap because there is a bit of language barrier when you're there. Yes. So it was nice to have that option of saying we want to go from here to here in the app. Tells you how much it's going to be. Gives you your driver name as your all the info you need, and super simple. And then it can just bill your credit card, or you can bill in cash. So it kept things easy for us.
And I use YANDEX Translate for everything, especially menus. You take a picture, it scans it, it translates it into English. It was really helpful.
Yeah, the YANDEX Translate was huge because there were a few areas where the language was a barrier, and so that did help. I'm sure there's a whole bunch more YANDEX apps. We probably would have looked more into it beforehand if we had known. So I would just take a look around at some of those that might help. Like she said, the Metro app as well is a good one. Number 9.
Learn a few Russian words. It was always greatly appreciated by people when we could say thank you, even if we weren't saying it properly. But go online, learn a few things. It'll go a long way. People really appreciate the extra effort.
Spasiba. Nostrovia. We learned that one on our vodka day. That was a fun one. That was a fun one. I learned some more. I'll put the clip in here. I learned some more words with that, with our friend that we met there. Cheers.
Cheers. Хороша чертовка, скажи. Марк, скажи. Хороша чертовка.
And then just like even things like yes and no. It's just that kind of stuff is really nice to have. Or at least then you know what they're saying to you sometimes. Like if someone keeps saying yes to you and you have no idea what they're saying, at least if you've heard it, you kind of know. So it just helps a little bit to know
and recognize words. We figured out what coffee looked like as a word and what the word restaurant looked like, and that was really helpful.
Yeah, and not that it's hard to find restaurants, but it was a little easier when you know what exactly it says. Yeah.
We love coffee.
We do love coffee.
Number 8 is
to pre-buy some of your entrance tickets to the different sites that you're going to throughout the trip. A lot of them you can buy when you arrive and it's no problem, but things like, let's say, Catherine Palace, that one can line up like crazy, and it's also very hard to get to if you haven't pre-booked a tour or you haven't pre-booked some sort of transportation or something along those lines. It's just made it easier to get your tickets when you arrive. The Kremlin in Moscow, you'll be waiting in a line that's all the way down around the Kremlin. We had our tickets, we just basically walked up to a short line of about 5-6 people, picked up our tickets and walked right in. So that was really convenient. There was no worrying about it selling out, all sorts of things like that. So continuing on that, we go into number 7.
Which is to pre-buy your transportation online just in advance. So things like train tickets, we noticed a lot of the younger people spoke quite a bit of English, but a lot of the older people didn't. So, and those are the people working in some of the train stations and that kind of thing. So pre-buying it, you know your train, you know the car you're going to, it just makes it really easy. You get there, you can get on the train, and you can buy it on the spot, and I love a little bit of spontaneity in the trip, but for transportation, you're better just to pre-purchase.
It was kind of funny because we walk up to some of the security places and they'd be saying something to us and we're like, English? And they'd just say, okay, just go. We're like, okay, cool. Like, so it actually worked out for us. I'm not sure what they were saying, but there was a little bit of language barrier there. So it made it easier having, we knew exactly what our train number was. We looked, we found it on the screen. We were on our way. So that was really helpful. Number 6, and this is a big one for us. Number 6 is to leave enough time to properly see a good amount of the country. There's a lot of different areas to see in Russia. You're not going to see it all. But don't just go and say, oh, I've seen Russia, I went to St. Petersburg for 2 days, because that's nothing of what it's like.
Yeah, make sure you leave enough time to actually see multiple cities, and if you only have a few days, of course it's great to still see some, but this might not be the time to take the trip. I think at least 10 days would be the absolute minimum to kind of get into a few places. You want to get into some of those small towns. You see such a different view on the country from the people you meet and everything there. So leave as much time as possible to really get in and explore. We spent 3.5 weeks and we were only able to even see kind of a little bit of the West. So yeah, leave the time. It's a massive country. Yeah,
we visited St. Petersburg, Kazan. We went through the Golden Ring, we went through Vladimir, Suzdal, Plos, Kostroma,
Yaroslavl, and then into
Moscow. But we would have loved to get into like Veliki Novgorod and a bunch of other different little towns, and a lot more that people have recommended through our videos. So there's so many places to see. Get into some of the small towns. Don't just see the two big towns. It's amazing to see Moscow and St. Petersburg. Don't get me wrong. Those are awesome, awesome cities. But it's really cool to see a little more of that small town and different styles of life in different parts of the country. Like Kazan is very Muslim. It's just very different.
Yeah, the mosque was absolutely incredible, and different food from the
the Tatarstan, it was?
Yeah, people and like, it's just a different thing. And so that was really cool and totally different view of this country.
Number 5, a little bit of what we just mentioned is trying different culinary, trying different cuisines, because Russia is full of so much different variation. Like Russian food is awesome, really good. I love a good stroganoff or borscht, you know, like just really, really good food. But getting into the other ones we found that we never expected, Uzbek food, Georgian food. We were having like wraps and stuff from Azerbaijan. It was amazing.
Yeah, really unique things. And it's all kind of countries that were formerly part of the USSR, if I'm not mistaken. And so there's a lot of people from there, and you get to try these foods that are unlike anything I've ever tasted before. And if we just stayed and ate at our hotel, we would not have the chance to really experience that. So get out. TripAdvisor is awesome for finding restaurants that are really well reviewed too. If you want to look for an easy suggestion nearby, look for little hole-in-the-wall places and just get out and eat.
Yes, so enjoy Russian food. Russian food is great, don't get us wrong, but also try all the other things because they're so, so good as well. So much variety. Number 4, do partake in guided tours. We like to try and do things on our own as much as we can and see the city without having to take guides everywhere. But guides were very helpful for us in learning a lot of the history. Of course, we've learned a lot of the history from our history buff friends that are commenting on our videos, which is really nice. But we learned a lot about all the different things like the palaces. We didn't do a guided tour in the Hermitage. I'm sure there would have been a lot of really cool history in there we could have learned from a guided tour, because we learned a lot on our walking tour in St. Petersburg about the Hermitage, Winter Palace and whatnot. So there's free tours you can take in every city virtually. Just
kind
look
of every
up
city in the world. Free walking tour Moscow, free walking tour anywhere.
Yeah, and we found them everywhere. And those are really nice because it's like an overall city tour depending on what you're looking for. And it's usually free, you just tip the guide. And then you can also book pre-booked actual tours, which cost a little bit more. Both work fine, whatever your preference is. But do take those, or at least thoroughly read a guidebook, because there's so much history that you will miss. And you won't get the same experience if you're not getting all that history, like just learning a little bit about the city and the struggles they went through, or
it's such a long history. So I think it's better, and reading it from a book, I mean, it's fine, and you can read it and you listen, but you don't hear it the same as you're actually engaging in a dialogue. So So number 3 is get to know the locals. So if you're from Canada or the US, you'd know that generally on the street there's a lot more kind of smiling at each other and just different, kind of a warmer presentation to strangers. And so it's often misconstrued that Russians aren't friendly, and this couldn't be further from the truth. Smiling is just not something that's customary to strangers. They actually find it a little strange. We had someone say in one of our comments that only crazy people smile so much. So it's one of those things that don't mistake that as being unfriendly. Talk to people in your hotel, your servers, even people sitting at tables next to us would strike up a conversation with the cutest little girl in the fast food joint, sit down and want to practice our English. And people are really lovely and really eager to just kind of show the really warm side of Russia. So don't let that stereotype get in the way of kind of what it truly is. It's just different values when it comes to interacting with strangers as far as your face goes. There's nothing to do with the friendliness. So get to know people. You'll get to see some really great things. Might even have some fun experiences like we did, that you end up spending the evening hanging out and having food and getting to know someone. That was
one of our best days on the trip. Honestly, it was so much fun just learning and like sitting there and talking to a local for 4 or 5 hours and enjoying a few drinks and some food, and just getting to learn, hearing from their perspective. And just talking about silly things about how
and why reindeer, why it would be weird for a Canadian to be eating a reindeer. And if you're not sure, Google search Canadian Santa Claus. See why eating a reindeer made me laugh.
We had reindeer, it was awesome.
We ate Rudolph.
But that was a very, very cool experience. We highly recommend, if you can, just talk to the locals.
Talk to people in your hotel. People are so friendly, and just really give that opportunity a chance.
This is reindeer. We're doing shots
10 hours,
of
I think.
local vodka.
Canada, 10 hours the other way.
And this is raw,
Ну,
like carpaccio reindeer.
the,
Which we dip in pepper after the shot.
the most
We made a
different
friend here.
will be when you
Don't tell her, just let her try it first.
No.
try it and then
I want to know what it is.
Two more shots of
and tell
vodka.
me what is it.
I wanna
And
know.
not really sure what this one
Okay, hold on, I'll take it.
is. We're trying something new though.
Number 2 is more practical.
Yes, number 2 is get a SIM card for your phone. That was a big help for us. Of course, if you have a great data plan or whatever you want to bring home from home, that's all very helpful as well. But a SIM card was really nice to have because then we could use things like YANDEX Translate. We could use things like YANDEX for like Uber transportation.
Mark posted a lot to his Instagram stories too.
Yes, I was posting the Instagram stories all the time. But also for transportation, just using your maps or learning how to use the metro. They have so many different apps that you can use to help yourself get around that having a data connection was really helpful. You could get away without doing it, but it was really nice to have. Oh, and even restaurants. When we were looking for restaurants, like, hey, let's try Uzbek food today, or let's try this or something. And we could look at nearby restaurants and figure out which ones were close or rated well, because we read a couple of random places where people were saying that it was hard to find food, which was not an issue. There was lots of restaurants and great food.
But a travel hack, if you don't get a SIM card, is the app maps.me.
Yeah.
You can download maps in advance and actually offline follow them. So we do that often if we don't get SIM cards, but do get a SIM card. But if you don't, maps.me.
Yeah, and they've got, again, restaurants, the directions, they can do GPS and all that.
Yeah.
That's a really good app as well, yes, for sure. There's lots of those kinds
Hidden
of apps, I'm
travel
sure.
hack.
Yes, travel hacks. You heard it here first. Number 1 is probably our biggest tip, and we're gonna have a separate whole video on it because it's something that we found was a big hit for us, and that's just going to it with a very open mind. Your perspective, you might go into Russia versus leaving Russia will be completely different. You know, we were thinking, we weren't necessarily sure what we were thinking.
We didn't know what to expect.
Experience exactly in the country, but you know, it's just, you hear so much in media.
Yeah, there's a lot of bias in the media, and it kind of made us realize, I think the Russian perception is that there's more bias than there really is, because we met a lot of people saying that, see, we're nice, and there's people in Canada don't think that Russians are unkind, and I think there's a lot of characters in movies that kind of don't necessarily portray Russians in the best way, and so there is that. Oh, we can't talk about this now. It's the next video. Watch our next video.
No, but it's true though. There was videos where we were watching during the trip that like 2 of the shows we were watching, the bad guys were Russians in it, and it's just, you get that portrayal and that image, and that's just not something we found there. The people were all so amazing, and again, we'll talk about this some more in another video, but go into it with an open mind.
Yeah, don't go into it thinking that you're gonna have this really hardcore experience. It's just especially the cities is like these awesome, beautiful, big cities like anywher else in the world.
I was gonna say, it's like anywhere else. It's like being somewhere in Europe. Like you could, and there's obviously different history and it's a different country, but like the big cities are beautiful, the countryside's beautiful.
Yeah, and just do your research before you go. If you're unsure about something, just do some Googling and just get a little bit more information.
So that wraps up our top 10 tips for visiting Russia.
Some practical, some fun, some kind of opinionated things of ours. And you may disagree with our tips, but these are things that I think we wish we had known going into it. So hopefully they're helpful to you. And if you have any different comments, feel free to leave them down below.
And more tips by all means. If you have more tips you think that might be helpful to know before you visit Russia, please comment below, let us know. And it'd be great to share those with other travelers. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next one where we go into a little bit of perspective before and after our trip, which is going to elaborate on point number 1. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Perspectives on Russia. Our cat wanted a feature.
She growled.